2, 3. Hi there, everyone. I think we're recording now. Yes, Tad Hargrave from Marketing for Hippies. I'm here with Allegra Stein from allegrastein.com for another point of view marketing case study. So if you're watching this video, I assume you have some sense of what I mean by point of view marketing, but for the noobs, basically, it's a very compelling thing to share why you do what you do the way you do it. This is a piece that is often missing in most marketing that I see. There's the problem is in good marketing, the problem is usually well articulated. The promise is well articulated, but the premise it's all based on is often absent or just cursorily mentioned. And yet this can be one of the most compelling parts of our marketing. And so Allegra Stein is somebody, she's been, it's her second round in my mentorship program. And when she started, it still is a life coach in a lot of ways, but has kind of moved into a business coaching thing, I suppose, but with life coaching elements to it. And the niche this is an interesting example of a niche that actually was inspired by a certain point of view, a certain philosophy. So maybe like I'll just actually turn over to you. Can you share what your current niche is and how you stumbled across that?
Well, my current niche as far as who it is that I'm working with right now is coaches, usually coaches towards the beginning of their coaching journey, though I do work with coaches who have been doing it for a while but have never felt like they fit in or can figure out how to do it. And I find that a lot of the coaches that want to work with me and that I enjoy working with are looking for a new way of doing things, a way of aligning their coaching practice to their unique gifts, to their strengths, their values, their lifestyle. And, I'm championing this idea that a coach's niche is as much about who the coach is as who it is that they want to help. And I find that a lot of models and kind of prescriptions for coaches who want to build their business disregard those unique characteristics of each individual coach. It's very cookie cutter, follow these steps. This is the way to do it. And if you don't like it, it's because you're not working hard enough and you just can't figure it out. And the way I stumbled across that is because I've been coaching now for almost 8 years, and I have tried model after model of like, here's the path to follow through the coaching wilderness. And I would get, down those paths a little way and just be like, I can't do this. I can't figure out these Facebook ads or funnels, and I'm not good at my list and all these things. And I felt a bit, rebellious, or like I just couldn't figure it out because I would always have these new ideas. And you've seen that because the first time we worked together, I was like, I've got this new idea. And for a long time, I thought that it was because I just wasn't smart enough to figure it out.
Right.
Which was hard because I knew I was smart, but I would literally say like, why can't I figure out how to like have a successful coaching practice? And it wasn't until last year I became certified in this tool called UMAP that showed me my strengths, my values, my skills, my interests, that all these dots started to connect. And I realized that the reason it was never a fit wasn't because of anything I was doing wrong, but because the pathways weren't aligned with who I was and how I naturally work. So that kind of, that cascaded into this moment last December when I woke up and I just thought, every coach should have their UMAP. I don't want any coach out there thinking that there's something wrong with them because they don't want to fit into the model of coaching that is very prescriptive and kind of, typical. And that really has then evolved again through conversations with you, through exploring how this fits into niching, and that turned into the program that I run now. That's really all about celebrating diversity in the coaching industry because every coach is so unique and different.
And what's the program called you're running?
It's called the Niching Compass.
Yeah. It's interesting because I remember one of the things you were saying that you were hearing was so many coaches, they'd word it as I'm having niching drama as one, and the other one that they didn't want to be a coaching clone.
Yeah.
which I'm sure a lot of people watching can relate to, is you go to a coach's website and they all seem to look the same. They all seem to say the same thing. Their business models, the sales funnel, everything is kind of identical. It makes me think of, I remember one time I was here in my living room, was doing one of my weekend retreats, the living room sessions, and
Mm-hmm.
this woman, she was a raw vegan coach, and we were talking about, well, what could her business model was, literally couldn't have been more generic. She does the raw food stuff. So guess what her pink spoon offer was? Any guesses?
A raw food menu.
Yeah, raw food recipes.
Right, recipes, right.
And it was, and so it was that kind of thing. And then the next thing was some other, like a raw food prep class, but nothing about it was unique. And so this is just immense trouble from a marketing standpoint, where it's, well, then why would somebody want to work with you, especially if they just stumble across you on the internet? There's nothing about this to grab them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and I remember Allegra and I had the conversation, and she was talking about this UMAP thing. So it sounds like niching, and you're helping them figure out their niche. And so this amazing niche for Allegra comes of helping coaches figure this out. And of course, I do my own work around niching.
Yeah.
But I wanted to share, have Allegra share her point of view, because maybe actually if you'd give context, because you did a 20-minute video sharing this point of view, basically. Initially.
Yeah, I did actually. That's where this all started. I mean, it all cascaded pretty quickly, because what happened was I thought every coach should have their UMAP, and it felt really clear. And in fact, It was the first time that I actually was able to link the offer I had with a particular market.
Right.
Because when I was working with you the first time, I had this offer that I was really excited about, but I was like, it's for anybody with a big idea, right? It was just like, I was very attached to my idea, because that's just what happens. I have these ideas. I'm like, isn't this the greatest thing? But it was never, the who was always very nebulous. So when I was like, I want to do UMAP for coaches, it was like I had both parts. I had the how and I had the who, and I had this confidence now about who I was. And that's when I was like, all right, Ted, I'm ready to dive back in.
Yeah.
And it was through those conversations that you really illuminated. And I still remember it. You said, you said UMAP is actually part of a bigger conversation that coaches are having around niche.
Yes.
And that really started to get my wheels spinning. And it was right around then that I kind of sat down and did that video, that what's missing from the coaching conversation is the fact that you are at the center of it, that you are what makes your coaching unique. You are what makes your coaching interesting. And the more you're willing to bring yourself into it, one, the more interesting your work's going to be. And two, the more fun you're going to have, because you're going to attract clients who want you to show up as you. It's like, and I feel like that conversation isn't being had, because so often it's like, pick a niche, set up a website, create Facebook ads. And I say that with complete respect of what niching is in the way that you teach it.
Sure.
The way it's taught, I think a lot of times is like, well, who's the, there's something that's missing to the depth of what niching really is.
Well, and this thing of what's missing, that's a very key phrase you often hear, when we're talking about niches, people notice what's missing in a certain community with a certain group of people.
Yeah.
And that's often that's the role they want to be known for. That's the thing they want to do. And I do remember that, saying it was right. This is a part of a bigger conversation on niche. And I remember I don't know how close it was or is to the UMAP you have now, but I think it's fairly close. But I remember doodling out, and I said, that's like, there are these 4 circles, and I sent it, I think just the back of an envelope, and I sent it to you. And then, you made this little 20-minute video, and then you shared that. And I remember we talked, and this is just important for everyone to hear in terms of the impact of point of view. So yes, I remember we spoke, and you said, well, what should I charge? And I think you were thinking on the bottom end, 500 for 3 people in a 3-month program. it's maybe 2000. No, you were saying 2000. That's right. And I said, well, it's your first time. It's a beta test. I would just make it a no-brainer, maybe 500. And you just went ahead and charged 2000, and you sold out 3 spaces in less than a week, I recall.
It was pretty quick. Yeah, it happened pretty quickly that it resonated.
Yeah, and then you did it again and again and again. And I mean, how many people now have you sold into this program? And so this is since what, February?
The first one was February, March, April was 3 each. So that was 12. And then I'm working with 10 now. So 20, over 20 in the past few months. And I'm still like the method of delivery. And this is just a reflection of, again, my strengths, is I'm always playing. So the container within which I'm delivering it has been evolving. How I'm delivering it in June is different than how I did it in April, June, because but before I would have thought that was a problem. Like I'm a reflection of what I'm trying to teach, of that it's okay to evolve and change, because there's no longer this insecurity that if I change all the stuff that it's all going to collapse, because I know that I am at the center of it, and that it's okay for my practice to reflect those parts of who I am. But I remember that video I kept up for a long time, and I only took it down when the pictures started to evolve in my brain. And even now it changes, that the circles and the layers and.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing it in a second.
Okay.
But I mentioned the 20-minute video because that was the video. Basically, the video was not a 20-minute video saying, "Hi, my name's Allegra Stein, and do you want to make it as a coach? And you can do that. And I really struggled, but you don't have to struggle 20 minutes of that. And then here's the pitch." The video was pretty much entirely her just sharing her point of view of saying, "Look, if you're in the life coaching scene and you're struggling with the niche and the niche drama, you don't want to be a niche clone. Well, here's what I've been realizing is missing. That niching, and all they do is talk about the who. All they do is talk about target market. But I'm realizing niche is a much bigger thing, and there's a few other elements to throw in here." And it was, in my opinion, it was the point of view. You spoke to a symptom people had, sure, but you then shared, here's my take on it, and people so resonated with that approach, with that philosophy, that's why they were willing to drop $2,000. And so, I mean, let's just say 20 people, and initial ones were 2,000, you put up to 3,000. So it's in the ballpark of $50,000 in the last 5 months. It's let's say around 10 grand a month, and that's really, in my mind, from the clarity about the point of view, and that when people heard it, they say, "Yeah, I'm on Island A as a coach. I'm struggling. Can't seem to make it work. The niche drama. Island B, my practice is thriving. It's feeling really good to me. I've got a clear niche." You were saying, here's my approach. Here's how I suggest. And because that landed, people were willing to spend the money. There was the credibility. There was the trust. There was that makes sense. Yeah, I can see how that would work.
Well, and I think that because through my own experience, I had a sense of what they were feeling, that it was a solution that a number of people who saw that video and who talked to me in my discovery calls are like, "Oh my God, I feel like I can relax." Like, "Oh my gosh, you mean there's nothing wrong with me? Oh my gosh, you've given me hope that there's a new way to do it." And I mean, I say all the time, like, I have no beef with other business and I don't even consider myself a business building program. I have an approach, and I have a point of view about how coaches can get started. And actually, the Niche and Compass now kind of is this combination of two things. One, it starts with really shining a light on who you are and how to bring that into your practice. But then I've realized there's almost the second phase of it is really my approach to how to get your coaching off the ground. How to, and I do this all the time, how to close the gap between you and your client. Because again, I have a point of view about what I think new coaches are told they have to do to start coaching. And it's like a laundry list of things that are not coaching. It's like, You want to coach? Well, first you got to build a website, and then you got to put out content. Then you have to have social media, and you got to get this many followers, and you have to put the ads up. And it's like, just this, the gap starts to build. And I do this with my clients now, because if they start telling me, I've got this really cool idea, but first I have to do this. And then they know what I mean when I'm going like this. I'm like, why are we making it so complicated? Just ask someone if they want to do it.
Right.
So
You're hearing a lot of point of view. Well,
it is. It's like two things.
Let's
Okay.
walk us through this niching compass.
Oh gosh. All right. So the niching compass started with this idea, and I haven't drawn this in a while, but I'll try and replicate, and I might present an evolved view.
Sure.
But it started with this idea that you helped me crystallize, that that coaches oftentimes, when they get their certification, and let's say they're like, okay, now what? It's like a Pandora's box of options and ideas, and all these coaches out there doing all these things, that it's very natural to look for teachers and programs that are going to answer the question like, well, how do I do this? Essentially, how do I get a client and get paid? So I find that the first thing that's often told is like, well, pick a niche. And what is meant by that is pick who you're going to work with. And I think that's what ended up over here.
Yeah.
Is pick who you're going to work with. And I believe this is incredibly valuable. And in fact, I believe you are an amazing teacher around how to clarify what that is. But what that does is it then kind of eliminates the coach and just says, well, only think about that person out there. What do they need? What do they need? What do they need? I don't believe that's the whole picture. There's this other thing that's really important to consider, which is how it is that you want to deliver your coaching. You know, what's the container that you want to create? This is where Alex Baisley's work really comes into play, because he talks about creating coaching experiences and bringing your lifestyle into it. And he's such a beautiful voice speaking to the creativity that's available to coaches. But again, a lot of times that we're just sent down this path of like, you have to do it this way. You got to follow a series of steps and expanding the gap. Now, at the bottom of this is like the what, and you, again, I remember talking about, that's just the coaching. That's the toolbox. That's the thing that you do. That's your craft. And up on top is the why. You know, what's your North Star? Why are you even doing it? Why are you coaching? Yeah. And the why can kind of, I like breaking it down into like micro whys, like, why did you pick that who? And you ask people that, like, so why do you want to work with them? You know, why is it important for you to help this person? Or why did you pick that how? Why is it you want to do kayaking, coaching, with ending with s'mores on the beach? Like, you can really dive into what your North Star is. So a lot of times we're just talking about these things. Oh, how am I going to do it? What am I going to do? Not to mention like the marketing piece, which in and of itself can just feel like an entirely different world. And so what I really started to say is at the center of all these things is what I think is the missing element. And the missing element to a lot of this conversation is you. That you and who you are is at the heart of what, again, became this niching compass. And I remember I drew a really cool compass. And that this is never, no one ever starts with that. We just immediately as coaches dive into trying to figure all this stuff out. And what happens is you end up like, it's like building a skyscraper on quicksand. You don't even know what's foundational. And another thing that I found is that when coaches begin, I'm a big advocate for playing, for like feeling freedom to try working with different people. And you've really reminded me and coaches in the program of like, yes, experiment, but also reflect, right? Like, but I find that coaches at the beginning feel this pressure to figure all this out very quickly. The metaphor I've been using lately is like the Wright brothers with their airplane. You know, when the Wright brothers wanted to fly, they didn't know how to fly a plane until the plane took off. Like, until that rickety wooden
Right.
plane, they ran down a hill, or I don't know if they were propelled, and went like this. They only imagined what it would be
Mm,
like to actually fly the plane.
right.
They weren't thinking about Boeing. They weren't thinking about jets or SpaceX or rockets. They were just like, let's just build something nimble and quick and that we can get off the ground so we can figure out what happens when we're flying. And I've just been thinking, I think a lot of coaches feel this pressure to build a jet
Mm,
before they've even experimented and just gotten something started for the sake of coaching. So anyway, I really wanted to bring the individual back into the coaching experience. And I can change this a little bit. I can make this a little bit smaller, because the way this picture has evolved, even just in this past week, I started drawing this picture today, is that you in the middle is actually a bunch of things.
mm,
Who you are includes your strengths, and I won't write it because it'll be tiny.
mhm.
It includes your values. It includes the skills, the way you like to spend your time. It includes your personality-based interests, like what are you interested in? What motivates and inspires you? And
Mhm.
it also includes your lifestyle. And so I've started to draw these multiple layers of, like, when you when you start playing with all of this from that place,
Uh-huh.
I just think you're setting yourself up for something much more sustainable, much more rewarding, much more confident as you start to kind of play with who and how and which, um, because again, I think who you are is as much a part of your niche as who you want to help and how you do it. And I don't think enough coaching programs or business programs are prioritizing that. So I'm like, well, then I'll do it. And then we do some playing, and then, again, and then I bring you in to help them think about, who do you want to help for now? Let's just build a plane so you can start doing stuff. And who do you want to help for now? And how is it, what's the snappy offer you can get off the ground, and actually start doing the coaching. And then it's like they're birds, and I'm just like, now go forth and have this adventure, having this in your pocket.
What strikes me about this, that the airplane metaphor too, is if you want to build a jet, it would seem the only way you can build a jet is you have to get somebody else's blueprints.
Exactly. Great
Because
point.
it's so
That's right.
complicated, and so then the gap is so big. And so then it's going to be years. Now you're going to have to raise money to get the engineers to build the thing, which is maybe still where you want to get to,
Sure.
but easier to get there. It's like, well, but do you need to fly right now? Yes, I need to fly right now. Okay, then you don't need a jet. You just need some. Anyway, so you're hearing a point of view there. And I really love this. So part of what I made a note earlier about, because what Allegra is showing you here is her map. And to me, the map is a consideration of what are the core elements involved in this journey. So again, all point of view is contextualized within this journey from A to B, if we're talking about a service. So struggling with my niche, don't know what my niche is, so I'm struggling as a coach, and I know that's why, and I have a clear niche. So the map is saying, well, okay, you want to make that journey? In no particular order, here are the things you need to consider. So a Venn diagram is another example of that type of a map. It doesn't have to go in a particular order. It's just it's not a prescription necessarily in terms of a syntax or sequence. It's just a description of here are the things. And the maps are very powerful because when people, I think every map that we offer, it needs to do two things. Number one, it needs to have some things in it that are familiar and some things that are unfamiliar. The familiar things, well, that's the relevance. Because I could imagine most coaches, when they look at this, they think, oh yeah, the who, right? That's all I ever hear of.
Yeah.
You hear a bit about the why, but not much. And the what, I mean, it's taken for granted. The how, well, that's interesting. The you, well, that's new. So you're hearing, there's certain things in a map that it's like, well, I recognize this. But now the truth is, if everything on the map is familiar, why would they hire you?
Mm-hmm.
There's got to be something new. Like, well, yeah, it's like, tell me something I don't know. Um, but if it's just only new things, then there's no context for it. There's no, I don't see myself. Every map has to have that you are here. And so when people look at this, I think they say, oh yeah, I can see, right, you're right. In the coaching industry, they talk about the who a lot.
Mm-hmm.
That's all they talk about with niche. I've never heard this other stuff. Or if I've heard it, it's not in the context of me. Aha. So there's something to locate themselves.
Yeah.
It's really important if you have a map. And I'm thinking about Kalita's map that she did, which is just, man, Allegra, you have to just, it's so good. It's so good. You have to check it out. But, on that map, as you're describing it, I mean, this kind of a map is the basis of a sales letter, an intro workshop, of a teleseminar webinar, where you just say, look, here's my take on it. And as you're doing it, what's happening is a map is also a diagnostic tool, because people are listening and they say, oh, I think I do have that one handled. Oh, I don't have that one handled at all. Oh, I have this one.
Yeah.
I was working with a woman in a puttering session, and she works, it's such a great target market. It's people in business who have a business partner and things are falling apart with their business partner. So she's kind of like a marriage counselor for business partners. And so we've been working on her map, and we kind of broke it down the other day to like, there's the internal stuff, the interpersonal stuff, and the institutional stuff as a Venn diagram. And so the internal stuff is, well, do you have a practice? Do you, is your mental health sound? Are you, do you know how to de-stress and all this? And then the interpersonal, well, do you have the skills? And also, is there a kind of alignment between you and your partner fundamentally? And then the institutional are all the systems, and policies, procedures. So even as I'm saying that, if you were listening to that, and you had a business partner and you had some troubles, part of your brain is saying, check, check, X. And so she could break it down and just have people, and this is the basis of a quiz too.
Yeah.
An assessment where somebody's saying, oh, they're there. And so at the end of it, what's beautiful is whether or not they work with you, they're a few steps ahead, because now they can see. So with Allegras, they might look and say, I've never even thought about the how. I just do it the way everyone else does it.
Yeah.
Or the why hasn't, and who, well, I'm told I have to, but I haven't figured that out. And then me, stunned look, I have no idea. Or some other combination.
Yeah.
It's very helpful because they can start to locate themselves, diagnose where they're strong, where they're weak. And somebody might come and say, no, I've got all of that. Everything you said, I've got. And then it's a genuine, from a marketing standpoint, it's like, you don't need me.
Exactly.
Bless you on your way. But somebody else might sit there and say, I have literally none of this. For me, it would be the, say the niche, the paths, the container, kind of the niche, tactics, and then the business model. And I know as I'm talking about it, I go over it and say, okay, here's what they all are. Here's a few metaphors to describe how they fit together. Even, the metaphor you gave, well, the you, that's almost like the foundation. Otherwise it's on quicksand.
Right.
When people hear that, I know they're starting to say, okay, I see, that's why I'm stuck. Because you can start to then say, if you have this one, but not this one, but not this one, or if you have these two and not, then people start to say, oh, that's the story I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm in the story of having those two circles, but missing this one. And then therefore, when you make the pitch, it's got somewhere to land.
Yep. And it's really interesting just hearing you talk about thinking about the coaches that I work with, just seeing now, even in this conversation, how some coaches do have clarity around these things. It's like there's a tool they've got that they're really into, that they're excited about. There's a who they want, but they just needed to figure out, they weren't doing anything with it. This is a perfect example. So I'm UMAP certified, and another one of the coaches that I'm currently working with is UMAP certified. And we had a session the other day. She goes, yeah, I really want to figure out how to make my UMAPs stand out from other UMAP coaches. And I said, the way it's going to stand out is because you are totally different than me. We are completely different coaches. But if you don't have a sense of that, if you're just like kind of removing yourself from if coaches remove themselves from the coaching and just say, I just have to make a really cool offer and pick a good niche and a who, it's very discouraging, because you're constantly just trying to figure out how to make yourself more interesting in a sea of coaches who are just, putting on. And I love just walking her through her strengths and her values and comparing them to my strengths and my values and really showing her that you and I can have the same exact offer, let's say for the same exact audience.
Yes.
But your working with you is going to be totally different than working with me because of who you are. And that was really neat to kind of even to sit with two coaches who are like, well, we do the same thing. We teach the same framework and we kind of want to work with the same market, even though I don't think people ever really do. I feel like there's so much nuance here that but let's say for the sake of argument, it's the same, that to still be able to say, oh yeah, you're not a fit for me. Like you should be with her or him or them, like is so, I just love that awareness when someone has it, when they're like, oh yeah, I'm different because of me.
One of the metaphors I've given is that, if somebody comes down to the harbor and they want to get from island A to island B and there's 100 boats, and they're all going to island B, they all specialize in going to island B, and they're all the exact same kind of boat, and they all take the same route. Well, at that point, one of the things you'll be looking at is who's the captain of this boat.
That's exactly the example that I gave the other day. I was like, who's the captain?
Yeah, I literally had this conversation this morning with a friend of mine, a colleague of mine, Mark Walsh from the UK. He runs something called the Embodiment Conference.
Yeah.
It's one of the biggest online conferences in the world, I think. And but he also has a program he does around life purpose. And we were kind of talking about niching and the angles. And finally I said, Mark, look, you're just emailing your own list about this, right? Yeah. I said, that they just want to work with you. They just want to hear your take on life purpose because you're a very on-purpose guy. They know that. And yes, there's a lot of other people, but they already know you. They're already familiar with you. They already like you and your style. And just assuming that they have some general need and interest in thinking about their life purpose, that's enough often. Because he has a very brash kind of style to him. I think about my colleague, Rebecca Tracy. She's got a way sassier style than I do. And this will draw people in and repel people and all of this. I'm wondering if you can give any examples from your clients in terms of how did the UMAP and what you discovered in the UMAP translate into a specific why, how, who, what?
Well, okay, here's an example. One of the clients and I'm like filtering through where everybody is with their work, but so it starts with figuring out what your strengths are. And I use Gallup Strengths Finder for that. And your strengths are divided into categories. There's thinking strengths and relating strengths, and some of them are more outward facing and some of them are more inward facing. And there was this one coach in the second cohort that one of her top strengths was individualization, which means that she really likes to see what's different about everybody. She sees it's hard to work sometimes. If you have individualization, it's sometimes hard to work in groups because in your mind, there is no one size fits all. Everybody needs something different. And so as a result of seeing that, one of the things that she was able to drop into is that she likely didn't want to work with big groups. She loves one-on-one work. And that's another one of the pictures that I draw. Well, I guess this is similar to it. I'll pull out my mini whiteboard because I'm a fan. But one of the things that I've been drawing again the past few days is I'm like, there's you. Hold on. There's your client. And then there's your coaching practice. So you're in the middle, including all of these circles, right? Your strengths, your values, and that all of those things are going to inform how you want to work with your client. They're also going to impact how you want to build your coaching practice.
Yeah.
So this particular client, for example, had individualization as a strength. And she was like, I really want to work in one-on-one partnerships. If I'm working with a coach who has a lot of relating strengths, that's one-on-one stuff. And they're like, I want to do a big group program. It's really cool when they're like, but actually, I really just love talking with people one-on-one. So that's an example of how it informed her wanting to create her practice. she now moving forward may not want to sign up for a business building program that teaches you how to build a membership program, right? Because not that you can't have individual relationships, but perhaps working with hundreds and hundreds of people in a membership is too, right? Doesn't allow for that strength of hers to come naturally. So she then took that. She was actually very drawn to the Strengths Finder assessment. And as a result of that said, you know what? I want to create a week where I'm using Strengths Finder, and she called it the Wonder Woman Week. And I want to work with women who, because she has a lot of background and career, and you helped her workshop this who piece for now. And within days, she had like, I'm going to do a Wonder Woman Week, and I'm going to meet with women, and I'm going to do their strengths assessment with them, because that's going to help me individualize to them what they need and how they can use those strengths moving forward. And all of that stemmed from her getting really comfortable with and aware of like how she liked to work. In the meantime, she was introduced to a tool she really liked. She very confidently moved in the place of like, who can it be for? And started to invite people. And within a week or two, she had 7-8 people saying yes to her for these Wonder Woman weeks. Her plane had taken off, right? Boom. The minute a coach says, oh my gosh, someone says yes, I'm like, plane's off the ground.
Yeah.
And what's really cool is after doing 7 or 8 of those, she was like, I think I need to change this. I'm not sure. And I'm like, exactly. Of course, we're not still flying the same planes the Wright brothers did, because they went back and they iterated and evolved, but you can't do that if you're not in it. And that plays to, again, more my point of view around how, and my point of view around who, and kind of that's more the second phase of the program.
So that's interesting. So if I were to say, hey, what's your point of view around how or who or what? I imagine you could talk for a while about each of those.
Oh, I love to just verbally process, Tad.
So that's good, because this is important. So what you're seeing right now is the kind of 30,000 foot map.
Right.
This is from the mountaintop map. This is the big picture. But within each of these, of course, there's a different point of view. There's a different, could you pick one of those and just give us a little bit of a breakdown of your point of view about one of those pieces? Does anyone jump out?
Well, I love deferring to you for the point of view on who, because I think you're just an amazing teacher of it. The why is more, I like breaking it down, because why can feel so huge. It's like life purpose, and people are like, what? So I like to kind of break it down. I have a point of view about what. I think that all coaches, I believe that coaches deepen their practice by learning many different frameworks and modalities. So when I work with a coach who is coming out of like their first certification, I'm always like, cool, you have an amazing tool in your toolbox. When I started, I had kind of this one framework, and I was like, this is it. But then as the years went on, I was like, but then I want to learn this framework, and then I want to learn this framework, and then I want to learn this tool. And now my coaching is like, it's no longer just like one tool in my tool belt, and I wear multiple hats as a coach. Sometimes I'll work with a coach and they'll say, oh, I really want to do this, but that's not good coaching. And I'll be like, says who? Like, who? There's no like
Coaching
Supreme Court on like, that's a coach and that's not a coach. And that too is that represents, that's my point of view of like, I think coaching can look so many different ways, and you can wear so many different hats. And every framework and idea you learn, from somatics to 3 principles to NLP to Reiki to energy healing, it's like all of that just makes your ability to show up where your client is at so much more rich and diverse than kind of like hanging our hat on like, that's coaching and this isn't. You know what I mean? It's not binary. It's a very,
right.
It's such I think coaching is just is an incredibly creative place to work, because there's so many perspectives and ideas that you can bring in to channel through you in service of the client you're working with. So there's a point of view I have about the what.
Well, I know with the how, we've
Yeah.
created this whole spreadsheet of, I mean, it must be
Oh
over
my
100
gosh.
different approaches to both the coaching and the how do you market it. And so there's a number of things I want to lift up here, but mainly you can hear in Allegra's point of view a real valuing of diversity, like, hey, having more approaches, knowing more approaches is better, because then you can come up with something that's really custom made to you, that isn't the cookie cutter
Yeah.
something. And so thus, we created this spreadsheet together of these dozens of different ways, because it's
So
easy to think,
many.
well, coaching has to look like a weekly hour-long phone
Yeah.
call. But could you give us just some thoughts of, like, what are other, because people might
Oh
say, well,
my
yeah, that's all.
gosh.
Coaching is basically, it's a once a week you have a conversation for an hour and that's
Yeah.
it. What
Yeah.
else would it be?
And I love when I show the coaches the coaching buffet, because their eyes pop out of their heads. It's like, there's so much. And I have to say to them, like, you're not trying to like do all of these things. The purpose almost of the coaching buffet is to almost shock people into the reality that there are so many ways that you can deliver your work. From, I am waiting to work with a coach who wants to do snail mail coaching. The day is going to come when one of my coaches is going to say, oh, I want to do a snail mail coaching offer. I'm going to be like, please, let's get that out there. But I mean, it's from the time you want to deliver it, to the modality, to the location, to what activities you do during that time together. Alex Baisley of the Big Dream program, he's just really great at bringing in all this creative energy to how you deliver coaching. And he just tells stories about, the coach who loved to ride motorcycles. And they're like, well, why don't you do a session around motorcycle riding? And you meet with someone and you ask them a question, and then you get on your motorcycle and you ride for a half hour. And then at the restaurant at the end of the road, you sit down and you say, so what came up for you during that ride?
Wow.
How amazing is that?
That is amazing.
Like, but that's one of, like, you're limited, I think, by your own creativity and by what interests you. It's this idea of creating coaching experiences rather than a coaching offer or a coaching service or a coaching.
What's the difference?
I just, he talks about, like, you can sell a service or a session, or you can sell an experience. And I'm just like, oh, that deepens it, because when you sell an experience, you can bring in what you love and your perspective, and it just diversifies it.
Do you have any other examples of this type of thing, of different types of how, or different creative ways that people talk about coaching?
Sure. I mean, one of the coaches from cohort 3, she really loves journaling. And she's like, I think I want to do a living journal where we work together for, let's say, 4 weeks. And every week there's a Google document. And every week I send them a prompt and they have to answer the prompt in the journal. And then based on their answers, I come in and I do other coaching questions around it. And then we can also have calls in between. And it was just this, I was like, that sounds awesome. And as she was describing it, other coaches on the call were like, I want that. And what was really cool about that, Tad, is that her excitement about the how started to inform who it was going to be for. And I said, listen, your clarity around this has naturally weeded people out, because you want people who love to journal. You want people who are deep into, like, self-awareness and are just like, yes, give me more journaling stuff. And I remember during the first time that you came in for the program, it's an image and emotion that I still do, that your how and your who, you said they attenuate to one another. That and I say this sometimes, I'm like, listen, if you have a really interesting, compelling how, the who maybe can be a little bit more general. Yes. Because who wouldn't want to go do a motorcycle ride? Like, and it's really fascinating. If your who is really specific, if you want to work with retired volleyball players who want to open up food trucks, your how can be a little bit more general. You can say, great, let's do 3 sessions for $99, right? But when both of those things just, like, really start to dial in and you add in that, it's like, it's
I'm,
just so great.
I'm
But you
really,
don't have to know all that to begin. I think that's my point, is it takes a while, and I want coaches to take their time in playing with this stuff. Just try out Wonder Woman week and then realize, actually now I think it would be better for this kind of person. And then I'm going to play. And over time,
I'm seeing how much of, I mean, part of whether to continue an experiment is, does it work? Is anyone responding? Is it helpful? But I'm also seeing this you in the center, that if you're, first of all, if you know who you are, if you know what your strengths are, your interests, your values, your weaknesses, the lifestyle you want to have, if that's all clear, you're going to make your first guesses are going to be better, first of all, because often, when you say, well, just try something, I think people feel completely at a loss, like, well, I don't even know what direction to go. So this at least gives some general direction, but then also in the reflection afterwards, you have a bit more of a clear base of, well, that didn't feel good. Why? Oh, right, because I'm an extrovert, and that had me not talk to anyone for weeks, or vice versa. So that there's a real, so this becomes, I guess, the compass. This is the, what helps you. This is the magnetic pole that you can feel in a direction that's more you. So you, at least what direction is what.
Well, and at least so if you decide you're going to change who you want to work with, you don't think that you're like, well, that's been a big waste of time. Because that's what happened with me, is I'd be like, oh, I want to change my niche, but I can't, because I'm supposed to pick a niche for the next 5 years. Like, and I didn't hear that. That was very early on, like this. And I hear this from a lot of new coaches that are like, oh, you mean it's okay if I just pick someone for now? And you've seen this in your conversation with these people who are just there's so much fear around doing it wrong, because if we do it wrong, then we're not doing it right. It's like, and so this, like, that's another thing, is like knowing you can always come back to this, and that actually motion here is part of the learning is really helpful.
What strikes me too about this is, and this is just something for people who are thinking about their point of view, I think fundamentally has to be represented visually.
Yeah.
Even if you're just using words, you're still conjuring images in people's minds. This is, I think, how we tend to really understand things, or get a kind of gestalt, the full picture. And so it has to be represented visually, and that also means spatially. It means, where are things in relation to other things? And so the fact that you is in the center is very telling, because to me what that says is, these other things can shift and change, but this stays.
Yeah.
This is the foundation. This doesn't alter itself. This only gets more true. But these other things, these are mutable. And like you were saying, that, I can see visually representing it. Sometimes the who might be a very tiny circle, whereas the how might be very big.
Yeah.
Or vice versa,
Yep.
And, one might be further, and all the, like, different planet sizes, like a kind of almost a constellation. But you are the sun, and the center around which everything moves, and there's no right or wrong way for it to be. It's just sort of whatever works, whatever size and heft and mass each of them have to have, so that they don't fling off into space or they don't crash into you. You're trying to figure out the orbits of these.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. And a couple of things came up. Is one, I think point of view is a layer here.
Yes.
But point of view tends to evolve. And I've noticed this, someone was saying like, oh, what's this point of view stuff? My point of view feels so clear because this became clear.
Totally.
And I feel like you shared that in something where someone asked, like, I don't even know who I want to work with. Should I do point of view? Like, what's your thoughts on that? Like, I don't know that I had this strong point of view until I was like, oh, I have an opinion about coaching.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, because I mean, it's always point of view. I mean, about what? That's always
exactly. Yeah.
About making baskets.
Right.
Well, that's a very specific something.
Yeah.
About life coaching. Okay. And life coaching for single dads who've just gone through a painful divorce. Okay. Well, that's a specific something, and so, yeah, it's always going to be a bit different, because otherwise, I mean, no one's interested in our broad cosmologies about life in terms of not they're not going to pay us a lot of money just to have us sit. Well, I don't. Hell, some people make a whole career on that, but but even that, there's a journey of like from a bad life to a good life, from an unhealthy life to a healthy life. There's always some context from being stressed to being at peace. And of course, even the people who make it at that general level often spin off some books around, this philosophy for addiction, for depression, for anger, and it's, you can keep doing it till the cows come home. But it's the liberating door is, it's for a service provider, it's always, it's the point of view about a particular journey. So what's the journey? And I've been amazed. I remember a puttering session with a woman, and she did Ayurvedic nutrition. And I asked her, well, why? And she said, well, because I struggle with fibromyalgia. And she couldn't figure out her niche. That's why she was calling me. And I said, well, and anyway, she tried everything for fibromyalgia. Nothing worked. This was the only thing that worked. It was the Ayurvedic nutrition. I said, well, couldn't you try that as a niche? And that had never crossed her mind, that she could focus on fibromyalgia. And as soon as we came up with that, I said, now what's a package you could come up with? Bam, bam, bam. All the ideas came. All the things.
The how showed up, yeah.
The how showed up. And it was easy. And she was so excited about it. Whereas, if the how, if there is no who, okay, Ayurvedic nutrition. Well, what's your opinion on it? Well, it's the opinion I was taught in school.
Right.
So you're just going to be kind of repeating so much of this is you're taking all the things you've learned in your life and you're translating it for a particular moment, a particular journey. And you're trying to make the journey easier, a little sweeter and gentler for other people, because you got lost on that same terrain yourself. And because you got lost, you're able to draw a map of it. I mean, I think that's why you can draw a map that, on the surface just looks so simple. And is because you wandered around that terrain of coaching and trying to figure out your niche forever. And the only signs that were on that terrain is like, come to Whoville, and you're like, oh, so, you'd go there again. And
do it this particular way.
And so then you start to realize, wait, there's a lot of these. And now that you know that terrain and you can help people see how they fit together, you can be really useful to people. And when people see, oh, this person really gets the terrain, they get the land.
Yeah.
Gives your words some heft, it makes you trustworthy, credible. People, believe you. So if people want to learn more about your work and, sign up for one of your Niche and Compass things, how do they find more?
They can just go to allegrastein.com. I'm actually in the middle of as of this recording on June 17th, I'm in the middle of a web redesign. So depending on when you visit, you may see the current version, which is slowly becoming outdated, or the new version, which is really fun and exciting. But yeah, allegrastein.com is the most reliable place. And if I can share just one last thing that came up for me, is that what I have created is a reflection. You asked for like examples, like is a reflection of my strengths and my values. That I'm an ideator and an activator.
Sure.
So I'm all about, hey, come up with ideas, try new things. And as an activator, I believe in learning through doing. So, and I also value creativity and curiosity and adventure and diversity. So I have kind of from that designed this thing that allows me to show up fully with all of that and to say all of that out loud, so that those people who say yes to me, they kind of have a sense of what they're going to get. And it's like, it just further, I don't want to say guarantees, but it just further assures that our partnership is going to be really rewarding for both of us, because I'm showing up with all of my stuff and they're showing up saying, yes, this is a fit for what I want.
Yeah.
And but I just want to put that out there, that someone else out there is going to design a program that's completely different, because they see things and they have work preferences and natural kind of just things that completely shape it. So it's like this thing that I'm doing is a reflection of all these things about me.
There's that Robert.
What's that?
There's that Robert Frost poem. There's a line in it where it says, the center cannot hold or will not hold. And it just strikes me, if people don't have this figured out, it doesn't hold together. I have to get going.
All right. This has been lovely.
Yeah, go everyone, check out Allegra's work, and
Thank you.
hopefully
Thank you for having me. This has been amazing.
yeah, and that, just I hope this inspires you to just start to think about visually, how do you represent your work? What's the map for your work? What are the elements? And maybe, I've got this point of view 30-day program coming up. I'll probably do it once a year, depending on when you see this. You can check that out. I've got my ebook, Point of View Marketing. There's tons of videos on YouTube around point of view that I've got as well. All right, I got to go. Take care, Allegra.
Thanks, Ed. Talk soon.